PCMag.com. We here at PC Mag, we can sometimes get a little too excited about technology, cheerleaders, and but that's what we do. That's why we're here. But sometimes you need to take a step back, see where we're all going, and just say, slow down. And that's why we have my guest, Douglas Rushkoff. His new book is Throwing Rocks at the Google Bus. Now, a lot of you might know from his previous book, Present Shock, but he's been writing books for decades now. He's an author. He's a cartoonist, you write graphic novelist, graphic novelist, documentarian, sometimes musician, professor. His geek cred is legit, for sure. So his new book is here, and it has a very alluring title. It's based on a true story, something that happened. So why don't you explain what the title means and how that's the launching pad for the rest of your book, of your argument?
Well, yeah, it was in, I guess, late 2013 when these protests were happening. People who were living in San Francisco and getting upset that their rent had doubled and tripled without prosperity being returned to them by the tech companies whose employees were living there. They lay down in front of the Google buses that were using public bus stops to carry and ferry employees back and forth from San Francisco to Silicon Valley to, I guess, to protest the gentrification and eviction technology that they really is the way they interpreted Google to be, and with some cred, in that argument. And even, if you lived around one of the Google bus stops, your rent was a third higher than it was elsewhere in San Francisco. So for me, those protests, and even the ones following in Oakland where people were throwing rocks at the Google bus, they kind of emblemized the way that, that Google was originally our team. This was the company, two kids in a Stanford dorm room start this company that's going to use a little algorithm to beat Yahoo at organizing the web, and it was this sort of democratic, do no evil young company that came to really epitomize the way that Silicon Valley extracts value from people and places without really distributing it again. So people are getting poorer as the companies get richer. And San Francisco, whose ethos really informed the sharing culture of the net, was now really just having its ethos appropriated as a brand of a lot of these companies.
Now, and also I should mention that you can leave your comments on Facebook, and Social Media is there monitoring, so make your questions good. We will read them live on the air. So last week, something amazing happened. A little company called SpaceX, they had a rocket come down and from space, landed upright on a barge in the middle of the ocean, which was an amazing thing. Now, it could be said that, a lot of your argument is about that corporations, which are driven by growth, but the investors in SpaceX, including Elon Musk and the other people, they were probably putting all that effort in partly because of passion, but also partly because they're expecting that big payday at the end of the rainbow, and maybe even some of the engineers there also who have shares in the company are expecting that big payday. So could something like SpaceX exist if there isn't that big growth opportunity? I mean, your whole thing is about getting back to the artisan kind of peer-to-peer sort of economies that have existed in history or throughout history. How could something like SpaceX occur without that big growth?
Well, I think some things you need a lot of capital to do, like make a bridge, build a big building, make a rocket ship, right? So that's a great thing for capital. That rocket ships are the pinnacle of the industrial age. Let's make a rocket. It's going to be hard to crowdsource that in some ways, or hard to just do it in your garage, although you could make little parts or innovate something. Where we get into trouble is when you have, say, a 140-character app like Twitter. And you capitalize it the same way you do a rocket ship company because you want this little app to somehow become king of the world. So now we're in a world where Twitter makes $500 million a quarter. That's $2 billion a year off a 140-character messaging app. And Wall Street considers it an abject failure because the investors want 100x, 1,000x times their earnings. So you can never get to a place where you say, well, gosh, what if $2 billion a year is all you can make off 140 characters? Shouldn't you be allowed to have a company that makes $2 billion a year off something little like that? I say yes, and that the error that a lot of people are making is they're overcapitalizing companies that are really just nice little technology companies, and that forces these companies to pivot into areas that have nothing to do with creating value. That these companies really just exist to extract value from people and places and convert it into share price. So whether it's Twitter or Uber or Amazon, these companies do not make other people rich. They don't distribute value. And I don't mean after the fact in some socialist plot. I just mean, does Amazon help the book industry? No. Talk to anyone in books. The margins are lower, the publishers are in trouble, but Amazon doesn't care about books. It wants to establish what's known as a platform monopoly in books so it can leverage into something else. So Tesla, that's a good example of a company that they actually make things. You know, they make cars and sell cars. It's like this old-fashioned, I know it's a bizarre business strategy, but the idea is you make something and it costs you a certain amount to make it, then you should sell that thing for more than it cost you to make it, and that's your profit. Then you put that back into the company or give it to the workers or give some to the shareholders. Gorgeous. You know, if you're just making things in order to sell your company, then you get into trouble.
Right. Looks like we have some questions from Facebook. Pete, what you got?
Is the problem, you think, with tech companies specifically or capitalism in general?
I guess the problem is with capitalism in general, but with capitalism in general, it could take 20, 30 years, say, for a Walmart to bankrupt the community where it's working. Like, we all know that Walmart, it puts all the local companies out of business, and then it pays its workers less than, slightly below the poverty level, so they have to go on welfare and get their medical costs paid for by the community. So slowly the community where Walmart is operating gets poorer and poorer and poorer until, oof, goes belly up. And right now, Walmart is closing stores around America in the areas where it already sucked out all the value. Now, an Uber can go in, or a digitally charged, almost a steroidally charged company from the technology era can go into these communities, can go into a sector or a vertical and suck all the value out in 2 or 3 years. So it's much, much faster, which is both more treacherous because we see the value going away, but it's also an opportunity for us to see what's happening. It's like when you go to one of those fast motion movies, like remember Koyaanisqatsi or something, where you see sunrise and sunset in compressed time. You can go, oh, now I can see the function of these companies. You know, the other reason why it's particularly painful to see it in the digital era is because digital technology, network technology, is actually biased towards distribution. It's biased towards distributed the velocity of money, the circulation of assets, rather than the extraction of assets. So when we use digital technology in this way, really what we're doing is industrialism on steroids rather than digital business. You know, Google and Facebook are not truly digital companies. They are the last industrial age companies living on digital platforms.
We got some more from Facebook. Pete, what you got?
Okay, someone wants to know if we've arrived at future shock, so essentially like too much change in too short a period of time.
Yeah, well, I mean, the book I wrote before this was called Present Shock. And that was really the answer to that question, to say that, you know, the shock is no longer some future thing. The future is now. We're here now. I mean, the idea of present shock is that we've gone from that 1990s leaning forward futurist kind of long boom Wired magazine understanding of the world to the 2000s, which now it's more, here we are now, you know, what's happening? What's in this for me? And a lot of people, I mean, look at the presidential election. A lot of people are asking, wait a minute, what is in this for me? Why aren't I participating in what's going on? And at the same time, we have these technologies that are so constantly pinging us and asking us for their attention. They're Wall Street and technology companies now, that they really have no more value to mine. They have no more money they can get from us. They're really colonizing our attention. They're colonizing our data. You know, and that's a strange feeling. And that's what I'm really calling present shock, is when all of this focuses on us in every moment.
Now, you also talk a bit about what a lot of people call technological unemployment, meaning that there just won't be the jobs for all the people in the future. I think that's going to be a big thing in the decades to come. Now, you have some...
I like that you say big thing, not big problem. You see, that's judgment-free. That's an unbiased journalist
Oh,
speaking.
yeah, but things are going to change.
That's good. I like that, though. That's good. That's important.
We can talk about those changes. Yeah. But Now, you have actually some solutions, which I think are kind of fascinating. One of is to have less, the goal should be to work less. I like that idea.
Yeah.
So maybe explain a bit more how the goal shouldn't be to find more jobs, but that we should change society, that we should not be working as much as we do.
Right. Well, this is the advantage in doing history research. You know, I read, and I'm a professor now, so I have an excuse to actually read books. And what I found out was that employment didn't really exist until the late Middle Ages.